All right, 8 diagrams for microeconomics for the beginnings of your review. We're looking at microeconomic diagrams, just like for macro. You got to know production possibility frontier. You'll also see it called a production possibility curve. This is showing it shifting out. In macroeconomics, we can also talk about it as increasing long-run aggregate supply. You are operating efficiently if you're on the curve, inefficiently if you're inside the curve. You can't attain anything to the right of the curve. Demand curve downward sloping. Okay. We hold everything else constant except for price. Okay. And because of that, if price changes, it is a movement along the demand curve. Price 1 to price 2, more quantity demanded. Okay. We say that we hold everything else constant, ceteris paribus, except for price. Lower the price, greater the quantity demanded. Higher the price, lower the quantity demanded. Remember that relationship, and remember demand is downward sloping. All right, so supply, okay, upward sloping, it's the exact opposite. We hold everything else constant, again, except for price. At a higher price, more people are willing and able to supply. So at a higher price, greater quantity supplied. At a lower price, lower quantity supplied. It's a direct relationship between price and quantity, as opposed to demand, which is an inverse relationship between price and quantity. Okay, where they meet is exactly where we get price and quantity. We know this because the price is higher. It sends signals to demanders to have quantity demand there. It sends signals to suppliers to have quantity supplied there. That's a surplus. Price should come down. If it's priced too low, you have a situation that sends signals to suppliers. Quantity supplied there, quantity demanded there. That's a shortage. Price should go up. So equilibrium price, okay, is where the supply curve and the demand curve meet. Remember, you label the vertical price, horizontal quantity. Okay, give us labels on every single line that we draw. Okay, have to have supply, demand, equilibrium down pat for AP microeconomics. If there is a change in anything besides price that's going to impact demand, the whole curve shifts. If it's just price, it's a movement along one of the curves or both of the curves. But if anything else changes, the weather, taste, something the government says, demand may shift out. Okay, it may shift to the left. To the right is an increase. Price will go up. It'll move along the supply curve. If it shifts to the left, okay, it'll move along the supply curve negatively. Price will come down. Any change in anything that would impact demand besides price shifts the whole curve. And same with supply. If anything besides price changes that would impact supply, the whole curve shifts. Okay? Wages go up. That's going to impact supply. Price of oil goes up. For most goods, that's going to impact supply. Right? Something changes for supply besides price, the whole curve is going to shift, and it will cause a movement along the demand curve. Government can intervene sometimes. A price ceiling, remember, is set below market equilibrium. If you need to, okay, remember, price ceiling, I have to be below it. Okay, the government has decided to create a price ceiling labeled PC here that sends signals to suppliers to only supply there, sends signals to demanders to only demand to there. That creates a shortage that cannot be overcome by the market because the government isn't allowing it to go any further in terms of price rising. Okay, if you set the price ceiling too high, it wouldn't make any difference because the price has to be below a price ceiling and equilibrium is. Classic example of a price ceiling is rent control. Okay, and in rent control, you create a situation whereby a whole lot of people demand apartments, demand housing. They can't get it because prices can't rise to meet, in this case, quantity demanded. Price ceiling is one type of price control. Right, price floor is going to be another. Okay, so if you have to remember it this way, stomp on the floor, you have to be above the floor. And so prices have to be above, in this case PF, price floor. That sends signals to demanders to have quantity demand there, to suppliers to have quantity supplied there. That is a surplus that cannot be overcome, in this case by anything, by prices and market situations, because the government isn't allowing it to do so. Classic example of this, if you think of supply of labor, demand for labor, and price per wage could be minimum wage. If it's set too high and is a price floor, you'll have a situation where there is a surplus of labor. Buffer stock scheme, we haven't spoken a ton about, but that's just a situation where a government's going to intervene to keep price between a specific region. And they have to supply it and buy it and almost be their own demand at times. Oftentimes for agriculture, government will try to keep a price between a specific level. Let's say it's right here, okay, and it's threatening to rise because demand for a specific product has gone up. The government has created stocks of this good. They'll supply more, okay, and then get to here where they're there, okay, between the two prices. What you need to remember really about a buffer stock scheme, we don't do it very much because it's hard for the government to keep stores of stocks, but also that simply it's designed to keep prices between a specified level. Some things to remember about demand. Demand can be inelastic. Okay? You wouldn't know for sure whether this curve was inelastic, but in general, what inelastic demand means is quantity demanded, percent-wise changes less than price. Think goods that are addictive. People will spend a lot for their coffee and not care about price changing so much because caffeine is addictive. So inelastic demand creates a situation where price will change percentage-wise more than quantity demanded will change. Elastic demand is a situation where price will change percentage-wise less than quantity. So small changes in price, in this case you see P1 moving down to P2, will create much larger increases in quantity, percentage-wise. An indirect tax is a tax placed on a good where we see it, we pay it, etc. That is going to cause supply to shift to the left. We can tell a number of things here. First off, to draw this, the vertical distance between the supply curve is the amount of the tax. Based on our equilibrium price, based on the actual price, and based on, as we come down here, the low end of the tax, we can see how much each group pays, consumers and suppliers, of the tax. It's called the incidence of the tax. In this case, because demand is inelastic, right, we see a situation where consumers will pay more of the tax than suppliers. If demand was elastic, or more elastic, I should say, than supply for the product, then we would see a situation where suppliers will spend more of the incidence of the tax. Again, you can tell that based on, when you look at the vertical distance between the supply curves, which is the tax, compare that to the equilibrium price. The distance to the top there, that's the amount consumers pay. The distance to the lower end of that is the amount that the suppliers pay. Helpful way to think about that is, what if demand was completely vertical? If demand was completely vertical, then consumers would pay the entire tax. Right. Do not forget about costs. There's generally three kinds to start with, a lot more. There's fixed costs, costs you have to pay no matter what. That's why it's a horizontal line. Variable costs start out at zero because if you're not making anything, there's no variable costs. Variable costs are costs with production. And total cost, which is fixed plus variable. There's also average cost, which is total cost divided by quantity. Marginal cost is the cost of the next, to how much it costs to produce one more. Here's some things to remember. Marginal cost will always cross average variable and average total at its minimum point. It's by definition in the short run, it will happen that way. We're going to see that the shutdown point, the shutdown point for a price is making sure you cover with a price or cost your average variable cost. So there's going to be another slide coming up that I'm going to skip by quickly. I'll leave it up there for just a second. But when we talk about whether a company should stay in business, you got to cover your average variable. When you're going to make economic profit, which remember, your regular economic profit is zero, you're covering your average total cost. Making extra economic profit or abnormal economic profit means you're pricing above average total cost. Long run, all the long run means, it's going to be a U-shaped curve. Follow the cursor a little bit there because each and every output decision in the long run is going to face a different short run average cost curve. You're going to benefit from economies of scale at the beginning. At some point, constantly returns to scale, but at some point, there's so much output, there's going to be diseconomies of scale. It's going to cost more to produce more. Total revenue. At some point, as it goes up, is going to reach zero. That's when marginal revenue of a product is zero. Remember, your average revenue curve is your demand curve, which we'll get to later. Marginal revenue cuts that in half. As long as marginal revenue is positive, your total revenue is going up. The maximum point for total revenue is when marginal revenue equals zero. All right. Normal profits happen when you're covering your average cost. So when you draw your cost diagrams, especially for monopolistically competitive markets, you've got a demand curve that's downward sloping in blue. You've got a marginal revenue curve that's downward sloping in yellow. You can draw it below zero. Then you've got an average cost curve in purple and a marginal cost curve that is cutting average cost at its lowest point, in this case, in red. Right? Now, why is quantity here? Quantity is here because that is where marginal cost and marginal revenue meet. Right? This is the point at which quantity has to be set. Right? Because anything beyond this, marginal cost costs more than marginal revenue. You will not produce any more, okay, when your production costs more for that individual good. Why would you keep producing here? Because you're earning a heck of a lot more per unit of output. So your quantity is set where marginal cost equals marginal revenue. You go up to the demand curve. At that quantity, this is how many people demand it, right here. Okay, that's your price, and because price is equal in this case to average cost, right, that means you are earning normal profits. Abnormal profits happen, okay, in this case, when price is set above average cost. If it's a monopoly, you can keep that. If it is a monopolistically competitive market, you will see a number of firms enter the market until the point at which price equals average cost. The revenue maximizing point, okay, if you ever got a question, okay, where should we set quantity to maximize revenue? Maximizing revenue is not profit. It's where marginal revenue equals 0. Sales maximizing point, okay, is where your average cost, okay, is going to equal your demand curve, okay, and that is a situation here. Right, that's just simple supply and demand. Price discrimination can occur when you can charge different prices for different things. Okay, those are a number, not all of them, a number of different diagrams you need to know for the microeconomics AP exam. We'll cover some more. For the assignment today, you need to diagram 8 of them. Thank you for listening.